The Pentagon was required by the last defense authorization bill to like produce some of their files on UFOs. And it turns out they have known about this since the end of the Second World War, which ended in 1945. Been a huge increase during that war, during the war as well. Huge increase in UFO sightings, in UFO crashes, et cetera, et cetera. And it turns out the federal government has been tracking this for 80 years and lying about it. So why? Well, that's a great question, and I can't answer it. I have theories, but I don't know. But here's what I learned. The first question is this real? Or am I just being a crazy person who's spending too much time on the internet? Well, this summer, we got a call. We didn't reach out. This person called us. Lexi, who's standing right there, who's a genius, one of our producers, gets his call from this guy who's a tenured Stanford medical school professor. And he wants to come on the show. Now, this guy has a couple patents, and so he's rich. And he's got tenure at one of the most prestigious schools in the world. So, like, he's not a flake. He comes on, and he's like, 11 years ago, the U.S. government reached out to me because I'm an expert on head injuries, on brain injuries, traumatic brain injuries, as a physician. And they had all these court cases from families of U.S. servicemen, over 100, who'd been killed by UFOs. And the Department of Defense was refusing to give them death benefits or medical benefits. And I'm like, and he's like, so they're in the courts. And I was like, there are over 100 servicemen killed by UFOs? Like, what? He's like, yeah. And there are court cases about it. I'm like, why isn't this on the front page of the New York Times? I don't know. But he goes, I'm involved in it. I'm one of the researchers. I'm the expert witness in these cases. Holy shit. What does that mean? And he's like, for example, UFOs appear to be attracted for whatever reason to nuclear energy. So at nuclear missile bases in the upper Midwest, for example, nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, nuclear-powered submarines are all getting buzzed by these objects, including underwater. And in a number of cases, these things have landed on military bases, including famously in Germany, in West Germany in the 70s. And servicemen have approached them. Like, what is this thing? There's this like giant glowing thing on the base. And they approach and they get traumatic brain injury. Like they are rendered. Like, they get brain damage or they're killed. And he studied their brains. And they have, this is all totally real. This is the Department of Defense, dude. And they've all had this damage from some kind of powerful energy that we cannot identify. So then this guy's like, wow, he's just a scientist. He never believed in UFOs. He's like, this is real. I cannot believe this is real. This is like crazy. He starts to do research on it. He's still at Stanford. And it turns out that actually, yes, these things have been shot down and crashed, and the U.S. government has the wreckage, and it's being held by defense contractors, Raytheon, Lockheed, which are big independent companies, but that work for the U.S. government. They're really part of the Department of Defense, but they're separate. So their sunshine laws don't apply to them. You can't actually get information from them. It's a very tricky way to hide information. And they have the wreckage from these crafts. And I'm like, really? Are we positive these aren't like advanced Russian or Chinese? No, of course not. But I'll tell you this, the most interesting from my perspective, I don't know if it's a consensus, but a lot of people, serious people, not crazy people who study this stuff, U.S. government employees, seem to believe that these objects are coming from under the oceans. So the conventional view is they're coming in from outer space. There's not actually a lot of, something enters the atmosphere, we can see it on satellite, and there's not any evidence of that, actually. Maybe it's happening, but we don't know that it is. There's a lot of evidence these things are coming out of the ocean, including videotape of these objects coming out of the water at high speed, or even more amazing, descending at Mach 3 into the water. And then, of course, we have a huge submarine fleet. What the fuck? Then we have a huge submarine fleet, American, but also Chinese and Russian, underwater with pretty sensitive measurement devices, sonar, et cetera. And they have recorded these objects doing hundreds of knots underwater. So let's just stop there.
Wait, what's knots?
It's 1.1 miles per hour. It's a way that we measure objects in the water. It's 1.1 miles. It's a little more than mile per hour. And a mile is a measurement that we use in the United States. Right. It's distinct from a kilometer, which I think is common in Canada. But anyway, these things are moving at impossibly high speeds. So let's just apply common sense for 1 second. If I take a 45 ACP, a 45 caliber handgun and fire it at you underwater in, say, a swimming pool, 50 feet away, you can catch the bullet because the resistance is so strong from the water that objects can't move that fast underwater. We know that. But they are, and they're moving without any visible means of propulsion. So no wake, no bubbles.
Where have we like tracked that?
All over
speed?
the world. All over the world.
Really?
Yes.
On like sonar systems?
Yes, from the submarines. And this has come out.
Wow.
Like some of this is in the New York Times.
That's crazy.
It's not like you have to go on the dark web to find out.
So what, is there like aliens are living in the Earth's core or some shit?
I have no idea. I'd only be speculating, but there is, I want to restate, videotape of these objects of unknown origin hitting the water and disappearing and then coming out of the water. And by the way, there was just last week, I spoke to a member of Congress about this who was on a military base in the state of Florida where they showed him images of 4 of these things that, like a Raptor pilot, some American fighter pilot, took these images of these objects right next to his plane. But here's the most interesting thing. They got a thermal read on him. They measure heat. That's one of the ways that, we get a heat imprint. Like if we have a thermal optic, I can see the heat coming off your body. That's how we see things at night. Yeah. The thermal imaging of this showed the heat at the bottom of the object and not at the top. And as the commanding general said to this member of Congress, he's like, that doesn't make any sense because heat does what? It rises. So you don't ever see a thermal image of anything with the heat at the bottom. The heat's at the top. Is cool at the top, hot at the bottom? How does that work? If I put a cigarette lighter under my hand, where's the hot part?
Yeah.
Right? So he's like, as a matter of physics, that can't happen. So to me, one of the most intriguing questions about all of this is, does physics actually describe the world around us? And no, not all of it anyway. So like, what the fuck is that? Like, if all of a sudden I'm saying like the laws of physics, like gravity, photosynthesis, like not all of that is real. Like it has limits and there are things that exist outside of it. That's when your brain starts to explode.
I just wonder what would happen if something does come out, more evidence does come out, how the people would respond to that.
We'll ignore it. So my impression, I don't know this for a fact, but everyone I've ever talked to about it is like, one of the reasons they're nervous is that this shows, and the Russians and Chinese feel the same way apparently, it shows that our military does not control our airspace, which is like a basic precept of a country. Like, this is our country, we control our borders, we control our airspace and our waters, and we don't. So that's really scary, and it shows that the military is not in control. So they don't want to admit that. And the second thing they're worried about is some kind of like mass freak out where people are like, I can't believe aliens are here. But based on my limited experience, I don't think they should worry because people are so high and so caught up in Prince Harry that like, I honestly think if an alien spacecraft landed in Times Square and started issuing orders, people would be like, wow, that's a trip, man. And then like the next day, Daily Mail would be leading with Prince Harry again.
Yeah.
I do think that.
Yeah.
So what's your theory on aliens based on all the research you've done? Do you think they're already on Earth?
I think that there's a huge amount of evidence in the archaeological record that these things have been around since the beginning of recorded history. The references to them. The star over Bethlehem may be one of them. Here's what I really think. I think I don't know. And I think that wise people understand the limits of their knowledge and of their perception. And we should all just repeat after me, admit we have no fucking idea.
Yeah, we have no idea.
We have no fucking idea. We don't know who killed Jeffrey Epstein. We don't know what these objects are. We don't know if physics is actually real. Probably not. Like, we don't know anything. We don't know what happens when we die. Like, stop pretending. We don't know where the war in Ukraine is going. Stop pretending that we're God. We're not. And we don't know a lot. And I just wish our leaders would say that. I think they're coming from under the ocean. It seems the evidence suggests that, but what do I know?
What would your encounter look like if you met an alien?
I'd be super respectful. And based on my conversation with this Stanford medical professor, I would conduct that interview at a distance because whatever is coming off these machines is very bad for the human body. Super, super killed people, like a bunch of people.
Yeah.